Hi there, this is Solitude from Solitude Films, and welcome to another video. Because I'm a little bit away from doing my backlog cleared video in the Criterion Collection, I thought I would just give 19 recommendations of Criterions. I don't like telling people what to buy or anything like that. There's the Barnes and Noble sale, their yearly or bi-yearly half price sale, which because I'm in the UK, Barnes and Noble don't ship, but usually Amazon kind of get in the act and do a 2 for $25 or something like that. So I thought I would just give 19 recommendations of films that you should maybe check out if you haven't already, because like I say, it's going to be a little while before I do a backlog cleared video on the Criterion Collection, and I haven't really talked about the Criterion for a little while, so I just thought I would do this as a little bit of fun. So let's start with Breaking Point by Michael Curtiz. Most of these are Region A, some of them are Region B, but most of these recommendations are Region A. So this is a 1950 version of Ernest Hemingway's To Have and Have Not. It's not a remake of the Howard Hawks 1944 version, the more famous one. It's a kind of completely different take on it. John Garfield gives one of his best performances, and it does have one of the most amazing endings in cinema history. This one is a 2K restoration. It's got a new interview with Alan K. Rode on Michael Curtiz. There's a new piece featuring actor and acting instructor Julie Garfield on her father John Garfield, whose story's pretty sad because he was blacklisted at one point. There's a new video essay by Taylor Ramos and Tony Zhu analysing Curtiz's methods. And there's an excerpt from a 1962 episode of Today showing the contents of the Ernest Hemingway house in Key West, Florida. And there's also a booklet. So I would recommend Breaking Point. Next is Heaven Can Wait by Lubitsch. This is just the DVD, but there is a Region A Blu-ray, I believe. This is a wonderful film as Amici as a playboy going to hell, and dealing with His Excellency, played by Laird Krieger. Obviously, if you're familiar with the channel, I do have a soft spot for Laird Krieger. And he tells in flashback his life and marriage with Jean Tierney. It's perhaps not Lubitsch at his ultimate best, but it's still well worth seeing. It is in colour. This one has a conversation between film critics Molly Haskell and Andrew Saris. It has a 30-minute 1982 programme, a portrait of Samson Raffleson, who's the writer. There's an audio seminar with Raffleson and film critic Richard Corliss from 1977. There's Lubitsch home piano recordings, and there's an original trailer. And again, there's a booklet. So that's Heaven Can Wait from 1943. Then we have Hopscotch. Yeah, this is a Region A Blu-ray, directed by Ronald Neame. I just kind of mentioned this one because obviously Ned Beatty sadly left us quite recently, and he gives a wonderful turn as a frustrated CIA agent, and he delivers a few F-bombs. It's funny growing up and watching this on TV, you didn't realise there was actually profanity in it. Walter Matthau gives one of his best performances, Sam Waterston, Glenda Jackson. It's a fun romp for adults, and Herbert Lom's in it as well. It's about a CIA agent who's retiring, but he wants to write a book with all his memoirs, so both the CIA and the KGB don't really want him to do that. It's a lot of fun. Next is Sam Fuller's A Naked Kiss, which might be my favourite Sam Fuller film at the moment. Obviously, with Sam Fuller, it kind of changes every now and again. But this is a wonderful film with an amazing opening. It's about a prostitute who quits the life and ends up in a small rural American town. But again, there's dark stuff going on, as you'd expect in every rural American town. This is from 1964. It's an amazing performance by Constance Towers, shot by Stanley Cortez. It looks absolutely beautiful on Blu-ray. This one has a 2010 interview with Constance Towers. It has excerpts from a 1983 episode of the South Bank Show with Sam Fuller. Sam Fuller, again, one of those guys you could listen to talk all day. An interview with Fuller from a 1967 episode of the French television series Cinéastes de Notre Dame. And there's a trailer, and of course there's a booklet, and this one does have a long shot corridor. These do have wonderful art styles. This is a Region B. I'm sure there's a Region A version. Next is Holiday with Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn, directed by George Cukor. And these three characters would reacquaint themselves the following year, 1939, the Philadelphia story. I actually prefer Holiday. It's not quite full Screwball, but it's pretty much there. This Criterion, which is Region B, which I've done a random review, did a random review of The Naked Kiss as well. This one actually has a 1930 version of the film as well. It was based on a stage play from 1928, so the 1930 version is a bit theatrical. The camera doesn't move much, the actors don't really move much, and it's just an example of what happens when you actually get star power in a film. It was a bomb when it came out, but it's so wonderful. It's predictable. Cary Grant is engaged to Katharine Hepburn's sister, who is very kind of normal and all about money, and Katharine Hepburn is the black sheep. It's one of the best black sheep performances in films. It's inevitable how it goes and where it ends up, but it's just such a joy on the journey to getting there. Next is Charulata by Satyajit Ray. This is a Region B from 1964. Obviously I've done a Satyajit Ray season, and Charulata is one of his best. Again, it's a simple story of a woman played by Madhabi Mukherjee, who's a Ray regular, whose husband works all day in his newspaper office, so he asks his poet cousin, played by Ray regular Sumitra Chatterjee, to come and spend time with her and hang out. And as they do, the relationship changes. They have lots of philosophical discussions, sit on swings. Again, doesn't sound amazing, but it is amazing. This one has a 2K transfer, an interview with from 2013 with Madhabi Mukherjee and Sumitra Chatterjee, adapting Tagore. It was based on the novel by Rabindranath Tagore. Again, this is a programme from 2013 featuring Indian film scholar Mohak Biswas and Bengali cultural historian Supriya Choudhury. There's an audio archive interview with Ray, and there's a new subtitle translation, and again you get a booklet. So I would obviously recommend Charulata. Next is Something Wild, but not the Jonathan Demme one. This is the 1961 Jack Garfein film, starring Carol Baker and Ralph Meeker. This is just DVD. I'm not sure there's a Blu-ray edition. Somebody can correct me in the comments below if there is. This is a dark film about a sexual assault and the effects that sexual assault has on Carol Baker. Strangely enough, I don't think this was box office smash when it came out. I was pointed to this film by Gray1951, so if you haven't subscribed to his channel, you should go over and subscribe to his channel, because he puts out really good content. It's dark, it's challenging, beautiful black and white cinematography. If you're wanting something a little bit different, then I would check out Something Wild. Next is Jigoku. This is directed by Nobu Nagagawa from 1960, and it's believed to be kind of one of the first Japanese horror films. This has a new documentary about the director and the making of the film, with interviews from actors and collaborators, and the theatrical trailer. And again, you have a booklet. Again, this is just DVD. I'm not sure there's a Criterion Blu-ray of this. There should be, because it's stunning. It's literally about a trip into hell. It translates as hell, or the sinners of hell, it was also known as. So if you're wanting something a little bit different and dark, and with historical importance, because it might be the first kind of Japanese, or one of the first Japanese horror films, it's well worth a look. Next is The Phantom Carriage by Victor Sundstrom, which I've talked about before in this channel. This is just the DVD. I really need to upgrade it to the Region A Blu-ray, because it's just stunning. From 1921, it's a silent film. Sundstrom, who of course is famous for being in Wild Strawberries, but he was an actor, director, writer in his own right, and a huge inspiration on Bergman. And it tells the story of the last person to die on New Year's Eve becomes death's helper for the next year, and drives the Phantom Carriage. And Sundstrom himself gives a wonderful performance. It's much more advanced than some of the German expressionist performances, which are all like wide-eyed and making sure everybody gets it. This is a far more subtle performance by Sundstrom, because he does play a bit of a git. So it's harsh, it's true, it's not kind of Capra-esque in any way. This one is a new digital restoration. The DVD looks great, but I really need to get the Blu-ray as well. It's got 2 scores, it's got an audio commentary by film historian Caspar Tyberg. There's an interview from Bergman from 1981, from the documentary about Victor Sundstrom. There's a visual essay on the Bergman connection by Peter Cowie on the influence on Bergman. The camera tricks may be kind of rudimentary by today's standards, but they still work and they're still eerily effective. And again, this has a booklet. Again, it's one of those films that I don't understand why I spent so many years of my life without seeing, because it's pretty phenomenal. Next is another Ernst Lubitsch. This is Designed for Living. This is a Region A Blu-ray. It's from 1933, and it's essentially about a threesome with Gary Cooper, Frederick March and Miriam Hopkins. Gary Cooper, who I'm not the biggest fan of, and you're kind of used to him being very stiff. He did a couple of Lubitsch comedies that he's very good in. This and Bluebeard's Eighth Wife. It's essentially about... it's written by Ben Hecht from a play by Noel Coward and directed by Lubitsch. I mean, that's pretty good pedigree. It's really dark, it's really sexual. Again, pre-code. About the relationship between these 3 people. It is kind of eye-opening, because you just don't expect the kind of content you'll find in it from 1933. But again, it's another Lubitsch wonderful, wonderful film. Next is one you'll probably all have in some way, but this is the Region A release of Dreyer's Vampire. This one has the disc and it also has the script, so it's well worth checking out or picking up if you can. It's a high definition transfer. There's an alternate version with the English text. There's a commentary by Tony Raines, who, as we all know, is awesome. There's a documentary on Dreyer and a video essay from Caspar Tyberg, who, like I said, featured on The Phantom Carriage. And there's a radio broadcast from 1958 about Dreyer reading an essay about filmmaking. And again, there's the booklet, which has the script, but there's also essays from a couple of people, including Kim Newman. So I would highly recommend picking this up. Also, this film from 1932 is seminal, influential. It is like being in a dream state. It's just an amazing film, and the Criterion package is well worth picking up if you can. Next, it's a Powell and Pressburger film, but it's one that people might not be that familiar with, from 1949. It's The Small Back Room. This is a film made after The Red Shoes and Black Narcissus, and it's black and white, and it's kind of realistic, so people might be a little bit shocked by it. It stars David Farrar. Sadly, he does not wear shorts in this, so apologies to David Farrar fans. He wears trousers throughout this film. And it also stars what's her face? From Black Narcissus and Matter of Life and Death. Kathleen Byron. I always forget her name. Again, this is DVD. I'm not sure if there's a Blu-ray in the Criterion collection. If there isn't, there should be. It still has wonderful Powell visuals. It's a really intelligent script based on a novel by Nigel Backlund. Again, it has a booklet. It's one of the kind of forgotten gems of the Archer's career. There's a commentary with film scholar Charles Barr and a new interview with cinematographer Chris Challis, and there's excerpts about it from Michael Powell's audio biography. There's audio dictations. It's a really, really good Powell and Pressburger film, but again, neglected and kind of underrated. Next is one of my favourite westerns of all time, Gregory Peck and the Gunfighter. It's a beautiful, simple cover. And this is the Region A Blu-ray from 1950, directed by Henry King. It's only 84 minutes. Doesn't need to be any longer than that. And it's simply Gregory Peck comes to a town to look up his wife and his kid, but his reputation is chasing him, and his reputation precedes him also. It's one of Gregory Peck's best performances. It's about the weight of expectations and reputation. It has a wonderful kicker at the end of the film. This is a 4K restoration. There's a new interview about director Henry King by Gina Tiroli. Excuse me. There's a new video essay on the editor, Barbara McLean. And there's audio excerpts of interviews with King and McLean from 1970 and 1971. And as you'd expect, there's a booklet. I do love the simple artwork on that. Next is one I've talked about on the channel, the Parallax View. This is the Region A. Hopefully it will come to Region B at some point. Arguably my favourite, or one of my favourite films from the 70s. Certainly the most underrated 70s masterpiece, I think. This is part of Pakula's Paranoia trilogy with Klute and All the President's Men. Personally, I think this is the best of the three, and certainly the most rewatchable of the three. 1974. Warren Beatty. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of Warren Beatty, but he's really good in this because he starts off as being the kind of smug Warren Beatty and self-confident and cocky, like we all kind of envision Warren Beatty to be, but that kind of changes as the film goes on, because he goes undercover to investigate assassinations, or an assassination that's happened, and he ends up playing himself, playing somebody else, and it's actually a really interesting performance. This is a 4K restoration. It's a new introduction by Alex Cox, so that's almost worth just buying it just for that. There's a new programme on Gordon Willis, the cinematographer, because it looks absolutely beautiful. There's a new interview with John Burstyn, who was the assistant to Pakula, and as you'd expect, a nice booklet, and the artwork in this one's really nice as well. It's one of those holy grail films that I had on films that deserve a Blu-ray, and it eventually happened, and I was so happy about it because it is an absolute masterpiece. Next is another absolute masterpiece that again has kind of been forgotten about. It's The Ballad of Gregorio Cortez, directed by Robert M. Young, one of the most important Chicano cinema films of all time. This is from 1982, starring and produced by Edward James Olmos. It's just a wonderful western about language barrier, and because of one little translation mistake leads to a whole bunch of tragedy, based on a true story. It's just absolutely stunning, looks gorgeous. It has that golden Haxel Wexler kind of cinematography. You know it wasn't actually shot by Haxel Wexler. It stars a bunch of character actors that you're all familiar with, including James Gammon. It's still relevant. It's just about the differences of cultures and language and translation. Even like getting a word wrong in the translation can lead to tragedy. It was the first trial in the United States where there was a translator actually at the trial. It's just stunning. The cinematography, I mean, it's low budget, but the cinematography is absolutely beautiful. The performances are amazing. It's one of the films that I cannot recommend highly enough. This is Region A Blu-ray. Again, it's another one of these films that you just go, why has this not been in my life for like 30 years? But you have a chance to have it in your life now. Next is another Holy Grail film that I've mentioned only about 76 times in the channel. John Sayles Matewan, the Region A, from 1987. Don't really need to mention any more about it. But if everybody buys a copy of Matewan, then Criterion might think they need to release more John Sayles. So everybody buy a copy of Matewan. Next is Georges Franju's Judex, which is quite weighty because it is a 3-disc version. There's a Blu-ray and 2 DVDs. This is another Franju stunner. It's based on the 1916 silent film serial, but he manages to condense it all in 97 minutes. Excuse me. From 1963, it contains just stunning imagery. If you're familiar with Les Yeux Sans Visage, you'll know that dreamlike, poetic, kind of visionary aspect of Franju's work. Again, it has an appearance by Edith Scope, but this time she doesn't have a mask. It's just absolutely stunning. There's a masquerade ball where everybody wears birds' heads, which is just beautiful. There's just so much amazing imagery in it. If you're not familiar with it, I would highly recommend picking it up as a blind buy, because it is just wonderful. There's an interview with co-writer Jacques Champro, from 2007. There's an interview from 2012 with Francine Berge, who plays one of the thieves in it. There's a 50-minute programme for Franjau from 1998. There's 2 Franjau shorts, Hotel de Invalides from 1951 about Paris military complex, and Le Grand de Méliès about Georges Méliès from 1952. And like I said, it's 1 Blu-ray, 2 discs, 2 DVDs, and a nice booklet. Plus the artwork on that is really nice, and the spine is really nice as well. And I'll finish with a couple of Gian Maria Volonté films, because I'm seriously into Volonté at the moment. The first one is Investigation of a Citizen Above Suspicion. Again, I've done a video on this one. It's an Elio Petri film, who again I've been seriously into recently. From 1970, it's kind of a reverse Kafka's The Trial, where Volonté plays a police inspector who tries to convince the system he's actually guilty of a crime as opposed to innocent of a crime. It's another one of Petrie's political, absurdist, futuristic films. The architecture in Rome, again, is that mix of modern and historical, and it's just an amazing film. It's not the madcap, wild, over-the-top Volonté that we're used to seeing. More of that in a second. It's just an amazing film. It's got a Morricone soundtrack, which you'll probably be familiar with even if you haven't seen the film. This is a 4K restoration. This is a Region B Blu-ray. There's an archival interview with Petrie. There is a 90-minute documentary on Petrie from 2005, which is really highly recommended, and again, another good reason for picking this up. There's an interview with film scholar Camilla Zamboni from 2013. There's a 60-minute documentary about Volonté from 2008, Investigation of a Citizen Named Volonté, which again is another reason for picking this release up. So you've got a 60-minute documentary on Volonté, you've got a 90-minute documentary on Petrie, and you have the film. So you've almost got 3 films in one. And then you've got an interview with Morricone from 2010, which again is about 20-25 minutes. So this is absolutely stacked. And there's trailers, and of course there's the booklet. The film looks amazing, sounds amazing, has so many wonderful ideas. I don't claim to understand all of them, but as far as the package of film and extras, this is really an essential purchase. Stunning film. And then a film that I've just recently did a review of, Christ Stopped at Boli, from 1979, the full 220-minute television version, by Francesco Rossi, again starring Volonté as a political prisoner who's abandoned in this town in the south of Italy, and just wanders about with his dog for 3 hours 40. But it's absolutely riveting. Again, I kind of said in my review, I'm not sure why, but it just works. The cinematography, it's a 4:3 ratio. The cinematography is stunning. Each scene, because of that channeling of the 4:3, the funneling of things in houses and in space, they all look like oil paintings. The whole film looks like an oil painting. The countryside is sensational. Again, it's political without it being rammed down your throat. It's an amazing, strange film. Because it's kind of split into 4 parts, it just flies by, which you can't say about all 220-minute films. This is a 2K restoration. There's an interview with translator and author Michael F. Moore, which is really interesting. There's a documentary from 1978 on Italian political cinema, which again is really good, featuring Francesco Rossi and Gian Maria Volonté. There's a 74-minute documentary featuring Rossi. Sorry, there's a 1974 documentary, not a 74-minute documentary, featuring Rossi and Carlo Levi, who who wrote the book and is the main character. And there's an excerpt from a 2014 documentary where Rossi discusses working with Volonte. And of course there's a booklet. Stunning film, even though I don't really understand why it's stunning, but I'm not that bright. So that's 19 Criterion recommendations. If you're able, they're worthy of taking a stab at if they're half price. And if they're full price, I would still recommend picking them up because some of them are sensational. So thanks very much for watching this fairly random Criterion video. You can let me know what Criterions you'll be buying in the Barnes & Noble sale if you can, or what Criterions you would recommend that I buy at full price, not in the Barnes & Noble sale. And hopefully you'll join me again for whenever I actually clear my Criterion backlog and do a video on my entire Criterion. So thanks very much for watching. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.